Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
The grass is cut nice and tight. Nick Saban has broken out the Panama hat, and all is right with the world again, at least in Alabama. It's spring football season in Tuscaloosa. The Crimson Tide began spring practice on Saturday. The countdown to 8A is on. The Tide will conclude spring drills with the intra-squad scrimmage on April the 19th. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock. Tonight, ice-cold Pepsi next. All the great Pepsi taste. Only 60 calories, though, per 12-ounce can. How about that? Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. Rod, let's get started. These off seasons, it seems, keep getting shorter and shorter. Football is already back. Let's talk about the items that came out of the first 2 days of spring practice. Rod, I know you don't get a chance to see very much, but you're always paying close attention when you're out there. Just talk about your feelings on having seen 2 practices.
Well, I mean, again, you're right, Gary. We see maybe 2 practices, a total of 20 minutes, so it's really difficult to say much other than looking at them physically. Very impressive, again, about what you would expect. Obviously, Scott Cochran's program still in full swing, Gary. I mean, he's, again, you look on both sides of the line of scrimmage, there's some really big guys that are put together really well, and you know, some athletic ability out there. It's always interesting to see some of the newcomers that came in early. Tony Brown, Cam Robinson, David Cornwell. We saw some video of those guys earlier. Jaron Reed, defensive lineman, as well as DJ Petway, Hootie Jones. I mean, so many outstanding young players that they brought in, so it's interesting to get an opportunity to finally see them out on the field.
Absolutely. Of course, Nick Saban is the man in charge. Let's hear from the coach now and what he thinks about what you really want to get out of your spring practice sessions.
You know, practice is really to create the repetition to develop the kind of habits that you can go out and play well. And I think that's what we want our players to understand, and that's what we're trying to do to help them prepare for the season and do the work they need to do to have success individually and collectively.
A big focus of the spring will be the quarterbacks and new offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin. We'll talk about both the QBs and Kiffin in just a little bit. All right, Rodney, spring is about renewal, and you already mentioned it. Something new, 8 freshman signees already enrolled. Let's talk about some of those guys, their potential impact. And did anybody catch your eye early among the newcomers?
Well, again, I think when you think about it, when you look at it, Gary, it's really difficult to say right now. There's Sean Dion Hamilton, the freshman linebacker from Montgomery Carver. 2 of those guys, of course, of the 8 Gary's talking about are junior college players. We mentioned DJ Petway and Jaron Reed, the defensive lineman. I think those guys, Gary, certainly have an opportunity to make an impact early. There you see number 2, that's Tony Brown, the freshman corner from Beaumont, Texas. And you see number 6, Hootie Jones there. And we've talked about Cam Robinson, of course, who's going to compete at that left tackle spot. And again, that's a great opportunity for him and all of these guys to come in early, have an opportunity to get acclimated, Gary. And, you know, a lot of times when they come in August, actually they come in June, go through the summer workouts, but when they get going in August, you know, they're kind of behind a little bit. They're not really sure what they're supposed to do, but it gives these guys who come in early an opportunity to kind of get acclimated. Then when fall camp comes, they're ready to step right in.
All right, you saw Cornwell there, the freshman quarterback. Let's hear from Amari Cooper, the junior wide receiver, talking about these freshmen and them coming in and competing right away.
I think those guys are very motivated and they want to come in and play. So I wouldn't say it's a friendly or the other word you use, heated competition. I would just say, you know, those guys are working hard and it's kind of like may the best man win type thing.
And one of those guys is a receiver, Cam Sims. I know there's a lot of talent at that position, but this is a good-looking football player.
Yeah, you know, Gary, he had an outstanding Under Armour Combine, Under Armour All-American week of practice. I mean, he's a big, tall kid, good hands, and, you know, he's kind of underrated there in the state of Louisiana. But, you know, again, I think as he emerged as a senior, he really started to display some of the talents that he has, and I think he's a guy that, you know, as time goes on, now we know that the Alabama receiver core is pretty solid, but he may have an opportunity at some point fairly soon.
I said tonight on the Sports, Rodney, the only thing constant in college football is change, and every year new players come in looking for a spot. Well, let's change subjects now for just a moment. Since our last show, Alabama men's basketball team lost in the second round of the SEC tournament, and Anthony Grant was given a vote of confidence by Athletics Director Bill Battle. Rodney, what does this mean for Alabama basketball moving forward? The obvious answer is that Grant's coming back, but can he turn it around after a very poor season just concluded?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he can turn it around again. Will he? That's the question. But, you know, when you look at the guys that he's recruited, Gary, the recruiting class that he comes in, I think, you know, they showed down the stretch. They won some good games, and I think maybe gained some confidence from that. But, next year's a huge year for Anthony Grant. I think, he certainly needs to turn the corner.
You see right there, Bill Battle, one of his comments. Here's part of the statement, which can be found at rolltide.com. It states that Coach Grant has earned the chance to continue building this program. And again, you can find the entire statement from Bill Battle on Anthony Grant at rolltide.com. Well, much more Tider Insider TV to come. Next, we'll get into quarterback competition as we wrap up our spring practice previews. That includes a lot of talk about this guy, the new offensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin. How will he tweak the Alabama offense and help develop that next starting quarterback, Coach A.J. McCarron? And coming up, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. You see the information right there on the screen on how you can get in touch with us. Interact with Tider Insider TV right now. Go ahead and give us a call, send us an email, or contact us on social media. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV will return right after this. The Alabama gymnastics team kept its winning streak alive against Auburn last Friday night. It's now up to 109 and counting. The Tide, still ranked 4th in the nation, and they'll compete this weekend in Birmingham at the BJCC at the SEC Championships. It's postseason time for gymnastics. Welcome back to TITV. Rodney, let's get right back to football. We have one true new coach on the field, meaning Lane Kiffin coming in from another program, but two old faces are back in new places, or is it new faces in old places? Regardless, Bo Davis and Kevin Steele are back out on the field. Rodney, let's discuss the new coaches that will be on Alabama staff this year and their potential impact. Let's start with offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin.
Well, I think one thing about him, the one thing that jumps out at me is, especially at this time when you have a new quarterback, Gary, you're going to have a new quarterback, A.J. McCarron, is what he's proven in terms of developing quarterbacks. We've talked about this. We mentioned what he did at Tennessee with Jonathan Crompton in 2009. I mean, I thought that was one of the best coaching jobs I had seen, because where Jonathan Crompton was at the start of that season and by midseason where he came and what kind of season he had that year in terms of throwing for 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, I think that was strictly a credit to Lane Kiffin and the system that he developed there along with that, with the players that they had around him. So, I think he certainly has, the great credentials, and it's going to be interesting to see him developing a quarterback here at Alabama. Who will it be? I mean, I know there's a lot of talk and feel that, when Jacob Coker gets here, he'll be the guy. But, you have a lot of guys out there this spring that are competing.
And in the case of Bo Davis, the defensive line coach, and Kevin Steele, inside linebackers coach, they know what it's like to coach with and under Nick Saban.
I think Bo Davis is an outstanding coach. He's a great recruiter, but I think the players relate really well to him, Gary. And I think, up front defensively, he's got some guys to work with, and I think he's going to maximize their potential in terms of pass rushing ability, because I think he does a good job at that.
All right, here is Amari Cooper again talking about new offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin.
He's a cool, laid-back guy. He's kind of, I don't know how old he is, but he's kind of young. The offense is, simple and player-friendly as far as the plays and terminology.
And here's a look at where these new coaches were at last. Of course, Coach Kiffin, the head coach at USC, much publicized exit there. Bo Davis was at Texas and then briefly took a job at USC for just a few days before coming back to Alabama. And Kevin Steele has been at Alabama in an off-the-field capacity for the last year and a half. Of course, he is a veteran coach, a former defensive coordinator at Clemson, Alabama, and many other places. So Kevin Steele, Bo Davis, and Lane Kiffin adding their expertise to the Alabama coaching staff. Well, we're a couple of days into spring practice, so tonight we'll wrap up our spring football preview, and it's time, Rodney, to talk in depth more about the quarterbacks that are on campus right now and going through spring.
Yeah. And there's several of them. Blake Sims, of course, there you see him. He's the veteran, the guy that's been around as the backup, and certainly has had a role over the last couple of years. And, you know, this is his opportunity, Gary, to maybe try to make a run at the starting spot there. You see Alec Morris, redshirt sophomore out of the state of Texas, has been around a couple of years, and, you know, he has a really strong arm and good size, and it's going to be interesting to see if he takes that next step this spring.
And what about David Cornwell? I mean, straight out of high school, but in terms of measurables, I mean, he certainly has the size, the arm strength. I mean, big, strapping, strong arm kid.
Yeah, I think if you drew a guy up, you'd certainly look at what he has and think that it's pretty close to being ideal in terms of the size. There you see him, big, tall kid, got a really strong arm. And, you know, he's not a bad athlete, too, Gary. He can run pretty well. But we do know he's limited in terms of his, you know, high school experience. He was injured his senior year, only played a few games, maybe half the season. When he went down with that knee injury, that's what he's coming off of, that surgery. But he's already back. He's participating this spring. I'm sure he'll be non-contact. Well, the quarterbacks are non-contact anyway, but you certainly would take, you know, some caution with him.
All right, let's take a look at the quarterbacks that are returning. Blake Sims, Alec Morris, Parker McLeod, and Cooper Bateman. A.J. McCarron's gone. Also, we didn't mention it, but Luke Del Rio transferring out to Oregon State. And quarterbacks coming in, David Cornwell already here, and, of course, everybody eagerly anticipating Jacob Coker arriving here in the summer. One quick note on Coker, though, he is working out hard down in Mobile at quarterback country. So even though he's not at Alabama, he is practicing.
Yeah, and I understand he actually was here, Gary, on Saturday for the first practice. So he'll probably be, you know, make it up here as often as he can to kind of get a glimpse of what's going on in spring practice. Of course, you know, as you mentioned, he still is trying to graduate from Florida State, and that's expected to happen later this spring.
All right, here's Nick Saban talking about the quarterback competition.
Success is defined by consistency and performance. All right, so who can be the most consistent guy doing his job well at that position? All right, now that's a critical position because that guy makes distributes the ball to somebody every down, whether he hands it to them, throws it to them, and the choices and decisions that they have to make, you know, go a long way in how effective and efficient your offense runs. So, which guys can develop into guys that can actually execute and do that on the most consistent basis? It's all about playing winning football. And that's something that you can evaluate in practice every day. And I think that, you know, a lot of our guys that we have ability. They don't have a lot of experience. And it'll be a work in progress all spring to see how they develop.
Indeed it will be. It's going to be an interesting battle, Rodney. And again, as we've talked about already, the guys working hard in the spring to move ahead of the competition, and then Coker comes in the summer, so it'll start all over in the fall. Well, coming up, we'll talk about one of the hottest teams in the Southeastern Conference. They swept right through their first two conference series. Who are we talking about? Find out next. And we're welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, you can reach us there at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us or contact us on Twitter. We'll hear from you and much, much more when Tider Insider TV returns right after this. Alabama softball just finished off another SEC opponent after sweeping South Carolina in weekend number 1 in the SEC. The Tide went on the road and beat up on Ole Miss in Oxford. Pat Murphy's group has moved up to number 7 in the national polls, and they are on a roll. They've got a midweek game tomorrow night against Georgia State that we will televise live for you here at 6:30 on WVUA TV. All right, it's time to take some phone calls. Rodney, let's get right to it. First up tonight is Laura Ann over in Oakman. Laura Ann, thanks for calling. How are you?
Good. I wanted to know who's going to be the leader of the defense, leaders of the defense this year. Is it going to be Adrian Robinson?
Well, thank you very much, Laura Ann. That's a good question. Ashawn Robinson certainly could factor in. No C.J. Mosley, so no Vinny Sunseri, no Ha-Ha Clinton Dix. Who's going to pick up a leadership role
really
in
needs
defense?
to step up, I think, at that inside linebacker spot. I think you'll see him become a leader, certainly. I think Landon Collins in the secondary now is, you know, had a great experience last year and got a lot of experience playing time. And so I think you'll see him also step up and be a guy that'll factor in as a leader. And they need some guys to step up, Gary. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, though, as the season goes along. Watch DJ Petway. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be really interesting to watch.
You know, I agree with you. I think he's going to have a huge year. I mean, a huge year. All right, Laura Ann, thanks for the phone calls. Talk to our buddy Plato and Panorama, wherever that may be. Plato, what's up?
Hey, guys. Good evening. the left tackle position in Alabama, starting the spring, it looks like they have Leon Brown and Grant Hill, and I would assume Cameron Robinson, number 3. How do you think that will shake out during the spring? Do you think some of those will move to other positions in order to get the best 5 on the line, or do you think it'll be some red shirts involved with some of those?
All right,
folks?
Plato, first we'll take the left tackle specifically. There's a battle there. You mentioned 3 guys. You mentioned 2 guys, in Grant Hill and Leon Brown. Let's not forget about Cam Robinson. So I think they're trying, first of all, to identify a starting left tackle.
Well, Grant Hill's also working at right tackle. I don't know if he's working any at left tackle or not, but Leon Brown certainly is. And you mentioned Cameron Robinson. Brandon Green's another guy that was a tight end last year. It's moved back to that left tackle spot. You know, we'll just have to see. I think when you're talking about the offensive line, they're going to try a lot of different options, a lot of different, you know, things, trying to find the right chemistry, Gary. And I think it's way too early. I know some people are kind of jumping the gun, getting a little bit anxious about the offensive line. But, you know, they have some guys to work with, and I think it's just a matter of time. They've only had 2 practices.
Yeah, and you alluded to it, but the second part of that question, as far as getting the 5 best guys on the field, that's always the goal. But position does factor in there. But you want to get the 5 best guys in terms of molding together. But there may be one guy that you play at guard that might not be as effective as somebody else on the offensive line, but the guy's not a guard, he's a tackle, so he has to back up at tackle rather than start at guard. But, yeah, they're trying to find chemistry there and get the 5 best guys out on the field.
Yeah, and also don't forget they've got some guys coming in the fall that certainly could maybe shake things up. It's really difficult for a freshman, but Dominic Jackson, junior college player, #1 junior college offensive lineman in the country, is a guy that could come in and certainly compete in the fall.
All right, let's take an email, and this is regards to basketball. Didn't take long for this one. Will in Leeds wants to know, does the Bruce Pearl hire at Auburn put pressure on Anthony Grant? It's a good question, Will. I'm not so sure it puts any more pressure on Anthony Grant. I think there's pressure on Anthony Grant anyway. I mean, 5 years in, he's been to 1 NCAA tournament, has not won an NCAA tournament game, had a very poor record this past season, both in the conference and out of the conference. So I think there's pressure on Grant to do well. I think there's always pressure on head coaches. You know, does Bruce Pearl bring some added attention to basketball in this state, Rodney? No doubt about it. And you know, that could be good for Alabama as well.
Yeah, I think so. But again, I agree with everything you just said, Gary. I think the pressure is already there. It's always there anyway. So, but I do think that, you know, it was already there regardless of the situation, the hiring of Bruce Pearl.
He is going to shake things up down at Auburn, though, in terms of basketball, no doubt about that. Well, next up, a dramatic weekend for Alabama baseball. We'll have that for you. And coming up, more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, that's how you can get in touch with us. So please go ahead and give us a call, email us, or send us a tweet so we'll know what's on your mind. More Tighter Insider Television right after this. It certainly looked like Alabama was going to drop its season-opening SEC series against Kentucky on Saturday. They won Friday night's game, but lost game 1 of a doubleheader on Saturday. Down to their final out on in game 2 on Saturday afternoon. Austin Smith, a 2-run shot in the 9th to tie it. Then Mikey White, touch 'em all, fella, with a man on in the 10th. The game winner. Alabama beat Kentucky 5-3, and in the process won the series 2-1. So what a dramatic finish for Alabama baseball on Saturday evening. Let's head right back to the phone calls. Charles in Sylacauga, you're with us on TITV. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I want to know, would the Tide defense be any better than it was last year?
All right, Charles, that will be the goal. I can promise you. Now, let's not forget, that was a really good defense. I mean, they had the bad game against A&M, let down late against Auburn, did not play well against Oklahoma. But the majority of the season, you'll remember, they shut out Ole Miss, they shut out Arkansas, they really did a number on Tennessee. This was still a really good defense. But yes, to answer your question, I think they will be better right now.
Yeah, I think there's a good possibility they will be, Gary. But, you know, they're certainly losing some guys when you're talking about C.J. Mosley, Ha-Ha Clinton-Dix, you know, Adrian Hubbard. I mean, they have some guys that they certainly have to replace. But when you look up front, Gary, there's a lot of talent there. And I think, you know, that's where it's going to start. What you're going to need, though, is you're going to need, obviously, Trey DePriest to really step it up. You know, maybe Reuben Foster inside, Reggie Ragland on the outside, Denzel Duvall, Dylan Lee, guys like that. And I think a good thing, I think, is probably the corners are going to be better. I think there's more experience there with after last year. You've got guys like Bradley Sylvie, you know, Cyrus Jones. Maury Smith was a freshman. Eddie Jackson certainly is one of the more talented guys potentially, I think, that they've had at the corner position around here. So And then they've got young guys, Marlon Humphrey coming in, Tony Brown's already here. So I think they've got the potential to be better.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. Coming up, it's time to make room for some more national championship trophies in T-Town. We'll tell you who brought home some hardware. Stay with us. We're coming right back on Tider Insider Television live from the University of Alabama campus right after the break. Here's a look at what's going on in Alabama athletics this week. Baseball at home tonight and tomorrow night against Alcorn State before heading to Arkansas this weekend. The softball team plays a midweek game tomorrow night against Georgia State. We'll have that one on TV for you. Then they take on Florida this coming weekend. Wow, that'll be a big one. Gymnastics, don't forget the SEC tournament, SEC championship on Saturday evening in Birmingham. It was a great week for two Alabama track athletes. DeAndre Batson took home the national title in the 200-meter dash at the Indoor Track Championships in Albuquerque. Not to be outdone, Ramona Burchell took home the title in the 60-meter dash. She's the first UA woman to take home a title at the Indoor Championships in school history. Congratulations to both of them. Well, it is time to head to dinners. We're about to wrap it up. We're headed over to Buddy's Rib and Steak in Northport. Come out and join Rodney and I. Talk some football, basketball, whatever is on your mind. Our buddy, Philip Guy, the owner, will probably be there talking it up with us as well. And always, you'll notice Rodney and I are wearing original elephant wear again tonight. Beautiful dress shirts from the Locker Room, located on the University Strip since 1964. Get by and see Alex Gatewood and company, or shop online for the original elephant wear and much, much more from their fabulous collection of menswear at the Locker Room. A reminder, if you missed the show, you can see a replay tonight at 10:30, or you can look us up anytime at WVUATV.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. So long, everybody.